In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful Podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. Your network is your net worth, but only if you nurture it with meaning. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pepin. Today we're diving into building powerful support system for ideas, the art of meaningful dialogue, and how masterminds can accelerate success. Our guest today is Mark G. Carter, founder of 180 LLC and author of Idea Climbing, How to Create a Support System for Your Next Big Idea. With more than 25 years of experience interviewing and researching successful people, Mark has published over 100 podcasts and radio show interviews and continues to share stories through his YouTube channel. His unique mastermind model focuses on action-driven outcomes and meaningful conversation, helping entrepreneurs and thought leaders not just connect, but truly grow. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let the world know with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your supports help more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Mr. Mark G. Carter, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
So far, so excellent. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to get acquainted a few weeks ago, and I think what you're doing is very inspiring, and the way you do so, I think, is so excellent. But to kick us off, please tell us more about 180.
The quick story of it is the super quick of a long story. Read a Tony Robbins book back in 1999, knew eventually I wanted to be out on my own, and immediately, not realizing I was an anomaly as an undergrad, I sought out any successful person that would give me 20 minutes on the phone. At the time, it was pre-social media. Kept interviewing people, still do to this day. A few years ago, I said, let's make it public. Started a podcast, got like 200 some odd episodes all included under my belt. And it all stems from a genuine curiosity to learn from other people. If you want to be out on your own or even be successful in corporate America, why reinvent the wheel? It just hit me. It's like, why would I just guess and hope I can learn on my own when I can learn from other people's successes, other people's failures, take out a few failures of my own, shorten the learning curve. And like I said, the interviews continue to today. And when I'm on stage, it's a keynote conversation. It's not me talking as a keynote presentation. It's a conversation. It would be like you and I talking about how to build a business, how to scale a business. And whenever we can, we involve the audience, but it all stems from the root of genuine, authentic curiosity about other people.
And that's, I think, one of the most defining traits about you. And you just mentioned, obviously, Tony Robbins, 1999. Where do you think this initial, perhaps, love for connections, for conversations emerged? Do you think it was something you learned from your parents, from your environment growing up? Where do you think that all began?
That's a great question. And I didn't realize, I mentioned I was an anomaly. I say that because when I spoke to my first undergrad class around 2003 in Chicago, they said, hey, talk about what you're doing. I'm like, what do you mean? I just call people and they give me advice. As far as where it stemmed from, it wasn't childhood, I don't think. It was just this curiosity as an undergrad student, a senior, wanting to learn more. And I just figured I may as well. And then it was like a high. The more people I talked to, the more people I wanted to talk to. So as far as the starting point, that is an awesome question. I don't know outside of, it just hit me one day. And I found when I wrote my book, Idea Climbing, I found my first tattered notebook from February of 1999 with the outline for my first 2 interviews. And from there on, it's just been a nonstop interview roll. It's been amazing.
Wow. All right. So really emerged just out of this sort of aha moment, just a bug that got to you. That's so interesting. And I suppose the way you see life, perhaps even outside of this endeavors, are you always like that? Always acting on intuitions, sort of acting more on this sense of what you think is right at the right time?
That was learned. It was reading books and metaphysical books, things like that, and really realizing whatever you want to call it, intuition, if you want to go just a gut feeling. I started following it, reading about it, taking courses on it, and realized my intuition was strong. And I did have, it was this inkling, I should really talk to this person. I started following my intuition. That was probably around 2004 and 5 is when I started studying. I remember buying the first books on it and really trusting that. And when I meet someone, and I still to this day for podcasts, I'll do, even if it's 15 minutes, let's get to know each other. It's not good or bad, I don't think, based for a podcast. I'll say it's definitely not a good or bad. Two people mesh or they don't. It just is what it is. It's like two ingredients in the science lab in high school. Alone, no big deal. Together, they could either form a really pretty color or an eruption of foam. Neither one of them by themselves is bad. So I trust my intuition before I put someone on my podcast. A lot of people just say, here's the link, get on the podcast. I want to see, does our energy vibe? Do we get along? Can we play off each other? Because it doesn't matter what the resume says. They could have 10 multi-million-dollar companies under their belt. If we don't have a good energy together, it's not going to come across good on a podcast. And those are the people I just politely decline and say, this isn't a fit. So I do trust my intuition a lot.
That's so interesting. You briefly mentioned the book, but I really want to dive deeper into it. Obviously, idea climbing as a framework of growth. I had the chance, I don't have a copy yet, but I did have a chance to take a look at the preview. And you had this great quote within it, which was, great idea died without a support system. Yes. Tell me more perhaps about why a support system is so important, and perhaps how do you see it involved now that we're tackling basically technologies and all these sort of diverse information systems that are coming at us?
Well, how to create a support system for your next big idea. If you can't see it, that's the subtitle of the book. And where it came from, I realized with all these people I was interviewing and then researching, I couldn't get to like Michael Dell, Richard Branson, obviously Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich is past, but I would scour biographies, autobiographies. And one of the things that stood out that led to the book was, I'll use Richard Branson as an example. He's the figurehead, the rebel billionaire. Oh my gosh. In his autobiography, he had a huge, and probably still does, huge support system. People that look like, even if they're the face of the company, and they look like the lone wolf climbing the mountain, hitting the top of Mount Everest, planting a flag, they got a lot of people around them. Whether it's ideas, it's the C-suite below Richard Branson running the company for him. That's where it came from. And I think when you mentioned technology, I think technology, when it's used the right way, if you go on LinkedIn and just say, I'm a coach, buy my coaching, I'm a coach, buy my coaching, you're not going to get anything. It's very rare, unless you're famous, then it's different. But if you're just a regular person, if all you're doing is advertising, it's no big deal. Have conversations with people. You get access, something like LinkedIn. You can find people, you can private message them, interview them. You could do a podcast. You could keep it private. But I think technology is awesome. I remember, like I said, 1999 when I started, it was who was on the New York Times bestselling business list, who was featured in the local business, at the time, the business paper. And I had to go out and find them, then find an email or an address and then hunt them down. Occasionally people would come in where I was waiting tables. I printed my own business card. I would follow up with them that way. But I think everyone, if they don't have one, needs a support system. And what was unique was I was refocusing and launching an entirely new suites of services when I was writing the book. I lived it. That was one thing. Because it's not just my journey. I know a lot of books are, here's what I did. Well, that's one person's view. What if I'm not you? What if I don't have your family? What if I don't have the same heredity that you have? Then your advice might fall on deaf ears. I use it to build a support system because I realized, wow, when I'm writing from the research and the interviews, I'm going to build my own support system and just be, an example of the book. But that's definitely where it came from is, man, everyone has one. And if you don't have one, you need one.
I recall reading some old Buddhist, basically, team books. And there was this interesting quote by Buddha, which is, the superior ideas are those that are developed and put into actions. It was basically arguing that the ideas for a simple sake of existing doesn't really matter, again, if you don't do anything with it. Thus, the importance of a support system, obviously. One thing on how you sort of I suppose, enhance those powerful and meaningful dialogues are in masterminds, right? And that's really something I want to touch on, because you have a way to elaborate masterminds that I think is very worthy for everybody to get to understand. But you seem to me, after sort of researching a little bit, that you seem to emphasize that a successful mastermind is not really about the volume, perhaps how strong you shout, or perhaps even how many people are there, but it's about very, very structured and meaningful conversations, perhaps, that sort of lead the way to outcomes. I'm really intrigued, but in your words, how do you design conversation to constantly basically lead to transformation in a mastermind setting?
What I learned, and here's the format for mine, take it, use it. What I learned is what you just said, there definitely has to be a structure. Even if it looks like it's free flowing, that means the moderator is that good. Like when you see a speaker and they make it look, it's like, oh, I could do that. The better the speaker, the easier it looks, the more freaking time they spent practicing. Trust me. And with masterminds, what I learned from people in the way I structure mine, so there's a focus point. It's not just, a lot of people will say, here's a breakout room, give your elevator pitch. That's what everyone does. What I like to do is start with connectors, a 90-day goal. Where are you now? Where do you want to be in 90 days? Oh, I want to grow my business. Very common with entrepreneurs. I want more referral sources. Okay, great. What we just created is an idea gap. We're going to build a bridge in this next 60 minutes. And in my mastermind groups, the ones that I run for my network, I like 6 to 8 people. And we're going to build a bridge across what I call idea gaps. And the foundation of that bridge is advice. And this is also a checklist for what people talk about in the room. Advice, support, and connections. And the key with advice is it's experiential advice. Here's what I did when you're starting a company, you ask for help. Here's what I did when I started my company, or here's what my friend did when she started her company. It's experiential. It's not opinions. It's not, here's what I read in a book. It's, here's what happened, boots on the ground, how I can help you. The support is just, it's a validation. I think you're on the right track, or maybe you should shift courses. And I think what a lot of people miss with masterminds is the connections. You get 6 to 8 people in a virtual room, or 6 to 8 people in a round table. My God, you spend an hour, they got to know what idea gaps you have, what challenges you're facing, what solutions you're looking for, and introduce them to someone who's not in the room, virtual or in person. I think a lot of people leave that on the table with, you mentioned you're starting a consulting business. She's not here today. My friend Karen, she can really help you out. Let me make an introduction. So that structure of advice, support, and connections gives people something to talk about in a focal point. So it's not just a bunch of people verbally vomiting for 60 minutes and no one gets anything. There definitely has to be a structure to it.
Very interesting. I recall I always been a fan of reading Joseph Joubon, and he sort of talks about this very interesting sort of paradoxal, I suppose, question that we ask ourselves very often, which is, in his words, it is better basically to debate a question without settling it than to settle a question without debating it. And I think that very too often in this world, we have basically a system that doesn't allow for that conversation to emerge, for that, I suppose, power dynamic to allow us to grow within that gap and get something of deeper substance, right? If you always go with half-truths and sort of rules of thumb, sometimes it's fine and you need them. But if it's not in order to grow the group as a whole, then what's really the point of doing so in the first place? And what I've learned, and I'd love to dive into what you learned as well, because I truly believe that interviewing people is an Indian art. I think that's, like you said, a lot of people, they see a successful speaker, like, oh, this is nothing. I could do that tomorrow. But if they have to see the work and the practice and the tone and the way they can basically put a topic on top of each other to stay consistently flowing, it is an art. And obviously you have, like you said, over 200 interviews now. So I think you definitely are practicing such a virtue. I think that you had sort of a way to uncover basically how asking the right questions opens up new dimensions, right? You sort of have this, since you're very curious, every single time I watch you with somebody else, I'm always quite amazed at how you're able to to maybe it's a unique question, but maybe sometimes just the timing as well that is very right. I'm really wondering, since you're a very intuitive guy, how do you craft a question that opens someone up rather than closing them off? Perhaps what's the how do you harmonize that?
The best advice I can give, and I like to go with what you've probably seen or heard in my interviews. I never like to just have a question and then move on. Not never, but most of the time, and just move on to the next one. I like to go a couple layers deep, and 2 questions, 2 words will do that. This is something a brand new podcaster, interviewer can use. It's something a pro can use to go deeper, or how and why. Basically, whatever they just said, they're talking about starting a company, they got going, they got their first, whatever dollars in revenue per year. Well, how did you get that much in revenue? Or why did you want to start a company? How and why are, oh my God, the most amazing questions, because they elicit a story. A piece of advice I can definitely say for asking questions: don't ask close-ended yes or no questions. It can stop an interview in its tracks, because then you're scrambling. They just said no. It's like, oh crap, where do I go from here? How and why, every time elicits a story. What do people like to learn from? Stories. So I use that a lot to go a little bit deeper. Why did you do that? How did you do that? And those 2 questions, like I said, whether it's a pro or someone just getting started, are just some of my best experiences and my best advice for interviews.
That's so interesting. I always heard that when I was growing up, but you only get answer as good as the questions. And again, this openness and this curiosity, I think, is so important to sort of establish again this way of, I think it was Dale Carnegie talking about that, but you had sort of this model that you can hold 2 opposing basically thoughts in your mind, and don't conflict them. Just let them exist. Don't judge them. Don't simply basically let them exist, because it allows you to again see things from the other side of that, perhaps, of that question. And I really try to practice that. I suppose for you, again, coming back to sort of the intuition piece, for you, when you're doing an interview, and again, or even a mastermind, sure, there's the structure portion, which you said was obviously a prerequisite of anything going well. But how much, I suppose, leg room do you give you to interject with maybe an off the spot question, or maybe something a bit more basically in the heat of the moment? How do you sort of, I suppose, balance that?
The way I do it is I am definitely a great listener. During an interview, I am completely focused on what they're saying. I do my best to box out external thoughts. It's not about what's going on today. It's not about walking the dogs after this interview. What are they saying? And by keeping that focus, and I've seen interviews where you can tell when the mind of the interviewer is wandering, and then it gets kind of awkward because they'll ask something that the person just answered. It's like, ouch. And by listening, I listen for little sparks and like an inflection of their voice. If they're talking about starting a company, and when they talk about grassroots marketing and, oh my God, it is great camp, I listen to the inflections like, ooh, they got excited. I want to learn more about that. So I listen to the inflection of their voice, listen for excitement, and then ask questions based on that inflection, that excitement. And that helps carry the conversation. It also raises the level of energy of the conversation, because now we're talking about something they're excited about. That makes for an awesome, energetic interview.
Yeah, energy is frequencies, right? I'm sure you're a believer in it from the way you sort of cite energy already twice. I really love that, because I think that's again, there's the content that is very important. Obviously, if you're just talking about boring stuff, the likelihood of it being quite a success is relatively low. But I think the energy in which you do so also is so important. We were talking about this a little bit offline, but I think it's worth sharing. How can people get better at not only recognizing somebody else basically energy, and like you said, some of these intonations that might basically trigger an excitement, or might trigger perhaps even an element of surprise? Did you, I suppose, learn that by just practicing it? Is there any best resources you can point out on sort of how to master it? Because to me, that is the difference. When I look at an interview, when they can bound and it can seem like they are basically symbiotic when it comes down to the synergy, everything just move much smoother. So really want to get in your head with that one.
What really the lesson I one of the first lessons I learned that really cemented energy for me, and I might get the name wrong. It's a Russian scientist from the 1930s. I think it's called Cornelian photography. It's something like that. It was
Okay.
brought up in a Bob Proctor talk. I'm a big fan of Bob Proctor. I do his courses, and him and his wife developed a photography way to do photography where it actually literally could capture the energy flowing from your body. That to me cements it. It's like you can't argue with scientific proof. And that led me down Law of Attraction, Think and Grow Rich, all sorts of books like that. And one of the best things that I did learn for daily energy, when I get up, if I get up at 4:15, I don't get up, turn on my computer, jump in the email. I'm watching a Bob Proctor video. I'm reading Think and Grow Rich. I'm feeding my mind good stuff. And one of the best ways to change your energy every day and be in a better place, morning and night, or at least one or the other, depending if you're a night owl or an early morning bird, is gratitude. Simply written. I'm grateful to be able to watch the sunset from my living room window. I'm grateful for my girlfriend. I'm grateful for this, that, the other thing. That shifts your energy. You shift into an energy of gratitude, and that can affect your entire day. It could end your day on a great note before you go to sleep. Your head's full of good stuff. Hopefully you'll have good dreams. If you don't remember them, you're still going to wake up in a better energy state than you would if you didn't think about gratitude. But that again, Cornelian, I think, photography, really it's like, oh my gosh, we are giving this off. And people pick it up. It's worth shifting energy. It's not always just like click, my energy's perfect. Journaling, gratitude, go for a walk, exercise, whatever it might be. When you meet someone, if you just naturally, you ever meet someone, you're just like, oh, this is, and it just flows. You're in the same energy vibration. You meet someone, it's
Yes.
you're in opposite energy vibrations. It's real. It exists. And that's people that have gut feelings. That's energy. You just meet someone, you love them, you meet someone, you don't like them, whatever it is, you are picking up their energy, whether you realize it or not. It's just, like I said, a scientific fact. And once people embrace it, that's when you can start shifting your energy to be in a better place almost every day.
Yeah, let me ask you a contrarian question, perhaps. Let's say that perhaps there I'm sure it happens multiple times, but can you remember the last time that you were interviewing somebody or you were in a room where the energy basically was completely off with someone?
Yeah, it's happened not recently, because what I mentioned for podcast, and oh my God, for live events, it's much more intense than a 15-minute conversation. We're going to be live for 45 minutes. We've got to have good energy. Earlier on, when I didn't vet people as much and I was just getting going, unfortunately it has happened, because then the energy gets picked up by the audience, and you just feel it shift, and it can be just like, oh my God, it hasn't happened for at least 10 years, but early on it would happen where I'm just like, I just got to get through this interview. And at the time, it's like, I don't know why, but I just got to get through this, which is why I vet people now very, very much. And now you said energy for in-person events. It's definitely an energy match or not. I will not get in front of an audience with people that I don't have good energy.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. I suppose for those that are still in this sort of pushing through, I suppose, period, right? That basically you 10 years basically ago. What's the best way you found to perhaps make the best out of a situation where energetically there's just a mismatch and sort of everybody sort of to pick up on it? Is there, I suppose, do you have any backstage sort of tricks?
Yeah, one thing to do if someone, which has happened, if someone's a lower energy, and I tend to be high energy, people will say, oh my God, I love how you turn it on. It's like, I don't turn it on. I tone it down so I don't steamroll people. It's not a turn on thing. It's a tone down thing. So I will advise, and I've done it before, where I'll tone it down and I'll meet them where they're at energetically, and not all at once, like hitting a switch, but I'll just bump it up and I'll increase my energy a little bit. Let them match it, increase it a little bit, let them match it. And that becomes my job as the interviewer, to raise their energy bit by bit to get them to a good plane of energy where I say, okay, now we can continue the conversation. But it's not steamrolling them. It's, like I said, it's not hitting a switch. It's matching their energy and then slowly bringing me back up to what I would call my baseline, which is pretty high energy, and bring them along with me to make the rest of the interview a good interview.
one thing that is that I really want to get into is that we're getting to a point where there's countless speakers, countless podcasts. I think the last data basically showcased about 1.2 million active podcasts basically in the world right now. There's this sort of, and which is fantastic, by the way. I think that new media is great, but one way that I think you must differentiate yourself basically within this sort of mass of some good, some not too bad, very bad actually, and some fantastic are sizzle reels. And you talk about that quite a bit. And you talk about it as an authority builder, perhaps. And even within your business, obviously, as you're pivoting basically into video branding and sort of empowering basically top leaders to translate their voice into comparing digital presence, I really want to get to the bottom of this because, again, I think this is such an important point. If any of you guys listening to this have any sorts of digital assets that you're trying to build, Mark, what's the key to creating a sizzle reels that gets remembered, that gets result, and perhaps gets people excited just because of that tiny bit, perhaps portion that was so mastered?
It's definitely getting to the why. One type of 90-second sizzle reel we do is 90-second. I call it the origin story. When people visit your website, most people will say what I do, why I'm so great. Here's some testimonials. That's part of it. You need those. I get it. But getting into the why do you do what you do? What happened in your life to get you where you are today? Kind of like how you started this. That's what people really want to know. And that's what I bring out in the interview for the sizzle reels. It's interviews. Speaker, just put it out there. Speakers reels are like 4 to 8 minute clips of someone giving keynotes. It's the highlights. It's for the meeting planner to say, I love you on stage. I'll hire you. Sizzle reels are interviews, getting to the personal origin story. Why do you do what you do? Talk about your life. And then the business story, getting into what problems do you solve? Why do people come to you? Again, the why becomes part of it. But what it is they elicit stories so people can, in quotes, get to know you in a 90-second video, a 30-second video, a little bit longer video. And it's all about sharing personal and professional stories, not just bragging about how great you are.
Why, you said why and how, which I cannot agree more. There's this sort of stalemate that I think happens when, again, you see that with some interviewers as well, and some interviewees as well, where sort of a closed-minded sort of, I want to keep it to myself. There's a sort of a secret sauce that I'm not sure if I want to share. I'm sure it happens very often with some of the clients you consult. It happens all the time with our agency. I suppose for you personally, convincing is not the right word, but I suppose, how do you entice people to really basically see beyond that, see beyond perhaps keeping it for themselves, and understand that in a world obviously prized by algorithmic and perhaps people who does answer what people are looking for. There's this great book, by the way, by Marcus Sheridan that I really recommend, which is They Ask You Answer. How do you sort of go above and beyond in this mindset of, well, actually, the more you share, the more authentic you are. And we'll talk about how that is important, specifically in this day and age in this podcast as well. How do you perhaps go over this sort of imposter syndrome, or this sort of a period of time where you're not sure perhaps it is the best thing for your business?
Are you referring to like when you get started with the business or started with the project?
So either start with a project, or even you're within the project, you're trying to make it grow to the highest level, but perhaps you don't pick up on those ins that could be very valuable for you to do so because of those imposter syndromes, or perhaps this sort of restriction of information.
Oh, I would definitely say vulnerability and a fair amount of transparency. One of the things you learn it in college, fake it till you make it, and making a waiter sound like a food distribution executive. It's like you delivered food. Just say you were a waiter and you got people skills. You're not a food distribution executive. Let it go. But people are taught fake it till you make it. Well, if you meet someone, let's just say you're starting a business and you're promoting like, I'm this great coach, consultant, whatever it might be. If you promote everything is amazing, you're closing the door to learning. If you're just getting started, tell people, even if it's through friends, I need a couple sample stories, testimonial stories. Can we swap services, or can I do this for you for free? And when you meet people at a higher level than you, when you're getting something started, especially if you feel like you have imposter syndrome, and I went through this myself and came out on the other side. I'm starting a business. I'd love to talk to you. Here's my struggle, marketing, networking, whatever it might be. Add some vulnerability. Don't try and say, I'm up here if you're really down here. Be honest about it. I'm great at what I do for the stage I'm at. Don't get me wrong. I'm great at this. Tell people that. Here's what I'd like to learn. Do you know somebody? And I did that when I wanted to bring on interns, and it was being vulnerable with someone that I could have bragged about. Oh, here's just the success stories of my company. And it's like, I got to build a team. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Only because I was vulnerable. It's like, oh, you got to meet my friend Joe. He has a academy. It's just about helping entrepreneurs. He introduced me. He gave me personal coaching. He helped me. But if I had just presented, oh, it's great, big name, client, money, I never would have got the help I needed, and I just would have stayed stuck of where I was. So being to a certain extent vulnerable, you don't have to completely just dump on someone. Oh, I'm having a crappy day. It's not that. It's just be vulnerable enough to be able to ask for help, and then take the advice and take action with the advice that you get. But I believe it starts with vulnerability.
That's fascinating. Fake it till you make it. Close doors for your own learning. Yeah, I'll steal that one from you, by the way, Mark. It's already too late. The tell me more about that. I think this is so interesting and so refreshing, actually, to hear. Do you believe perhaps that curiosity and this active seeking of learning and perhaps of getting help is one of the main superpower for today's entrepreneurs?
I think a genuine curiosity is definitely, because that leads to mentoring, that it leads to learning, it leads to life lessons. And people can pick up when you're genuinely interested in learning from them, even if it's something as simple as a networking event. Like if someone asks you what you do first, mention it and then flip the script right back to them. But ask them, why are you at this event tonight? What brought you here? Who are you looking to meet? Ask something to learn about them, and take the conversation beyond just what do you do? What do you do? Who do you want to meet? Who do you want to meet? But why are you here at this event? What are you looking for? You could say, who are you looking for and why? Again, how and why come into play here. But I think that's a big part of it. And definitely, if you can create, if you don't have it, you can build it. 80-20 rule of listening and talking. Talk 20% of the time, listen 80% of the time. If you do that, you will be a lifelong learner, and you can walk away from almost every conversation with someone more successful than you, learning at least one action item that you can take and implement in your own life. Because again, the vulnerability, but also that just boundless curiosity is what I consider I have. I love learning from people. I always have. If it's not innate and natural, develop it. Let people talk more than you talk. Listen more than you talk. And oh my God, the doors will just fly open for business, for mentorship, and everything in between.
In a world where we all want our 15 minutes of fame, perhaps, and where storytelling is so important and requires obviously you to share your own story and therefore talk and therefore sort of elaborate why you're even the word basically being listened to, since the information is again so wildly not only established but also available for everybody. This point, and I'm in the process of learning that to the fullest extent. So that's why I'm being indirectly mentored by you nowadays. But this sort of harmony between talking just enough, right? We have books, incredible books like Robert Greene, for example, 48 Laws of Powers. Always say less than necessary. But then there is this sort of other side of the medal, which is, like you said, active listening. This very truthful, and this is very important. Again, being truthful about it is as important as trying to doing it. I really think so. Intentionality, in my opinion, without action doesn't mean much. But again, actions without the intentionality in the first place typically results in this sour taste of not getting what you want, and therefore getting sort of angry. I don't recommend it. But in the preset, let's say in the hypothesis that you're well-intentioned and you're really going to somebody basically to get their mentorship, to seek basically to learn from them, what have you seen to be the most effective way to, again, be vulnerable? But which medium do I use? Is it better to use LinkedIn? Is it directly better to call them? Is it better to ask for an introductions? What has been the best way to sort of, I suppose, monkey branch your way to a certain extent, and not in a cynical way, but just find a way to get up that ladder in an effective fashion without losing perhaps this spark and authenticity?
Two ways. One, if you want to do it cold outreach, LinkedIn, based on what their comments, and if you message them, reach out, but tell them why. One big thing, I'll take a step back. One thing I'm a huge proponent of is, unless you're in a formal like college mentoring program where they give you a database, you're reaching out to somebody as part of a program, Unless it's that structured, don't ask someone to be your mentor. I've had so many mentors over the last 23 years in Chicago. It's nuts. I've never once had the words fall out of my mouth, will you be my mentor? So when you reach out to them, it's kind of like, as far as asking that too quick, it's kind of like going on a first date and bringing a diamond ring with you. You don't do it. You're going to freak the other person the heck out and they're going to leave. We just met. Will you be my mentor? It's like, whoa, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. But if it was LinkedIn, you reach out, say, I saw you posted about starting your second business and how you got it off the ground. I'm starting a similar business. I would love to talk to you. And here's the key. Even if it's just 20 minutes, don't say I'd love to talk to you because that leaves it wide open. Do you mean an hour? Do you mean a half hour? What do you mean? Even if it's just 20 minutes. After you tell them why, so they saw you put some thought into it, it's not just, oh, you're rich and famous, I want to talk to you. Here's why. I'm a huge proponent also of getting referrals. It's easier to go through someone that knows, likes, and trusts you because then they can vouch for you. Same format, though. Here's what I saw online or on the website, or I saw on the news, saw him or her interviewed. Here's why I'd like to talk to them. Do you think you can introduce me? I'd love to learn from them about how they started a business in this arena. Again, even if it's just 20 minutes, that makes it so easy for someone to say, sure, call me at Friday at noon. Can I, and don't use the word, can I pick your brain, especially if you're in like the coaching consulting world. People get paid to have their brains picked. So you're basically saying, can I have your services for free? Simply say, here's why I want to talk to you, or them if it's a referral. Here's what I want to learn or hope to learn. And can I have a conversation, even if it's just 20 minutes? Those words will get you so far. Like I said, that is the easiest thing to say yes to. Call me Friday at noon for 20 minutes. Definitely do that. But again, to reinforce it, don't say, will you be my mentor?
The biggest and most effective little tip that I introduce into basically this format, either it's for partners, it's for clients, it's for mentors, is being time specific. And that's so overlooked, Mark, and I'm glad that you say it, because again, we live in a world where everything is at the touch of our fingers. All right. It has never been this easy to be distracted. And therefore, when you're not time specific, instead of what you think, which is I'm being flexible, therefore there's more opportunities, it restricts them because again, it's not specific enough for them to encapsulate and say, all right, perfect, here's how it would fit within my schedule. The other thing as well is the people that don't know anyone and send their personal calendar as a first touch point. Be very careful with that. In my opinion, feel free to disagree. But when you're basically asking somebody to meet you, and on top of that, to pick the time basically to do so and fill out the questionnaire and so on, you're asking a lot of fun for somebody that is actually seeking out. Basically, so always lead with value, I would say, is something that is so important. Would you agree with that? Right? This sort of concept that, well, look, I want something from you. Whether it's a tip, maybe it's something I saw, but how can I be of value to you as well? So that way it feels like it's a mutually beneficial exchange. How have you been able to sort of incorporate that to increase the likelihood of getting a positive response?
I discovered this out of desperation when I was much younger, and I had phenomenal mentors at the highest levels, and New York Times bestselling authors, serial entrepreneurs, all that good stuff. It's like, I don't know how to give back, especially when I was new to Chicago. I was just new to networking, but I had all these mentors and having these great conversations in a mentoring space or a giving back space. The best thing I can say is make introductions for them and even tell them that. And part of the 20-minute call, I want to know what you're working on. More importantly, who are you looking for? Because I'm meeting a lot of awesome people. I might be able to introduce you to somebody. Start connecting your mentors to each other. That is the best advice I can give. The people that want to help, and even in the referral world, if you're talking about building a business, make sure that you're giving referrals, introducing people to people they want to know. But as far as a mentoring space, especially if you're new to it, just getting started, just add that question. And I like part of the conversation to be, I'd like to know what you're working on and who you need to know, like I said, because I'm getting introduced to a lot of amazing, successful people. I might be able to help you out with connections. That's the best advice I can give. Definitely.
Oh man, that's exactly what I did. For so long, I remember the very first couple of stuff when I was 16. That was exactly it. Truly using community as a business asset, right? Ellen Keller said it multiple times, but so many other people say things that are similar. But alone we can do so little, and together we can do so much, right? This concept that, again, your ideas are accelerated by your support, which is one of the three pillars that you shared at the beginning of this interview. But for you, again, you took it to another level in a sense that, to me, the way I see it, especially and I'm seeing this with my own growth as well. At first, you sometimes do it out of necessity, like you said. Well, out of desperations, I don't know, I don't have anything else, so I must basically do something, and that's step one. That's fantastic. But I think that there's a point where you live it. It becomes part of who you are. Right now, as we speak, this sort of enlightenment and this sort of opportunity seeking, where I will pay it forward, as they like to say in my field, just come naturally, just come basically as part of who I am. And I think that's a very, very, I think it increases your attractiveness from a business, from an opportunity standpoint. And I'm really wondering if you can go deeper into this quote of yours, which I found, which was, your next big opportunity basically is hidden basically within your network. You just need to activate it. Tell me more about that, and how to just cut to the chase to what is actually an opportunity and might be more of I suppose, a smoking show.
Well, if you want to call it law of attraction or anything else, if you want something to happen, you have to talk about it. You have to share it. So many people think, imposter syndrome plays a role. I don't want, I'm going to be at this level of business someday. I'll wait till I'm there to talk about it because I have imposter syndrome. The best thing you can do is say, and here's what I'm working on right now. And I started doing this. I'm looking at building online courses by interviewing people. There's a lot to it. I could have waited until I had the perfect scenario. Everything's done behind the scenes. Wait until I just started talking about it. I had three different organizations that we might want to use that. So it's talking and putting it out into the universe as far as, here's what I'm working on. And that lets those givers, those helpers say, hey, have you tried this? They'll give you that advice, support, connection. But I think if I hear your question right, a big part of it is you got to put what you're working on out into the world. Let people know what you're doing. Let people know what you need help with. Give them a chance to help you. Give them a chance to be that first client. Give them the chance to be that next client, whatever it might be with your business. Put it out there, start talking about it. The more you talk about it, the more energy you're going to give off, the better people you're going to attract. But that can only be done if you talk about it. And you can preface it with, this is a new project. So you're not fake it till you make it. Don't make it sound better than it is. This is a new project. Here's where I hope it's going to go. Do you know anyone that could help? Something like that will take you just light years ahead of where you would be if you didn't ask for help.
Yeah, it's coming back to the vulnerability, basically, portions. I think that's so distinctive to, again, how you sort of see this. One of my good mentor, Mark, told me, always be careful of sharing a big dream with a small mind. And I'm really wondering, perhaps, when you're thinking of that quotes and you decide to go maybe the cold route, how could you, I'm a huge believer that it was always a case, but I think that right now rejection is so easy basically to entertain. You might receive more than you used to. Yeah. Resilience and perseverance is so important, all right? Because look, even with the best technique, even with Mark as your personal coach, all right, one best in the world, you'll see that, again, this obviously won't be 100% basically result, very far from it. And those opportunities, the higher up you go to the food chain, like anything in life, the harder it is. The more proof of concept you might have, the more perhaps, like you said, why and hows that you need in your back pocket. I'm wondering, perhaps, when you take a look at this quote, again, be careful of sharing a big dream with a small mind. I'm really interested in, for you, when you're building a winning strategy, winning outreach strategy, are you typically more of a grassroots type of guy where you'll go to your warm contact first and sort of basically spread the words out, get people a little bit excited for it to just sort of, I suppose, scale up? Or are you more of the type of guy that, you know what, for this thing, I'd love to have Tony Robbins. Let me just basically put something together and just sort of go basically top to bottom. Is there something that you typically prefer and you recommend for people trying to accomplish and win with this strategy?
If you can go top to bottom, it can be good. Like you said, it can be a little bit harder to get in touch with those people. As far as starting, I am very much grassroots. I do start with my friends.
Okay.
And if you want to launch something new, one thing I suggest is, especially with virtual networking, you can be in your pajama pants and be networking as long as you're respectable from this far up. when I was launching new services, I went to groups where people didn't know me. And the purpose, yes, of course, I want connections. But for a while, the purpose was crafting my pitch. What's grabbing it? Okay, that grabbed attention and I got some traction. Okay, that one fell flat. So part of it is just putting it out there. But I think the best way to do it in the way that I've done it is start with grassroots, get some support. Don't go to the naysayers. Go to the people who will positively support you, positively being they will offer constructive criticism. If all they do is say it's good, that's a cheerleader. If all they do is say it's bad, that's also negative. Somewhere in the middle are the people who will say, yes, and what about this? What if you tried this? Once they believe in you, they see you taking action, then it becomes easier for them to say, oh, by the way, I don't usually talk about this, but in my Platinum Rolodex, I know so-and-so. She can help you. They're going to do it because they see you get started. You're taking advice. You're taking action. You're walking the walk. You're building a business. You're doing what you said you would do. That makes it easier for people to introduce you. But I am a big fan of starting with grassroots.
Very interesting. The one thing that I saw, and I think you made this shift quite recently when you moved to Chicago, but I might be wrong in my timeline, so correct me if I am. But it really basically, you really started to, you always documented basically your interviews because those are hard assets, but you sort of basically been more and more inclined to document the actual journey of what it is basically to do interviews and to amplify stories basically and sort of using that to help you gain influence and long-term trust and even brand equity, which is very something that I think a lot of people misunderstand. This concept of hard, basically digital assets, realizing the fact that once you do it once, right? This interview with Mark, I can use it as much as I want, wherever I want, whenever I want. And therefore it becomes a hard asset and a very good use of your time if you're tactical with it. But to me, perhaps, I am really a big fan of what Jeff Bezos said. I think it was on the Lex Friedman podcast, actually, which is your brand is what other people say when you're not in the room. All right. And that can apply to your brand reputation or even your personal reputation, right? When you're in the room, much harder to perhaps always say what you truly want behind your back. I promise you there's way less awkwardness. Tell me more about how can aspiring basically entrepreneurs build a personal brand by sharing basically other people's stories?
God, I love that question. Thank you for that. I am a huge proponent of building your brand through interviewing. And I will just to put it out there in case people think, oh, I don't want to start a podcast. There's so much involved. I'm a huge proponent. Start a podcast. Path of least resistance. There's LinkedIn articles that are free. There's LinkedIn posts even. If you want to be known for marketing, start a series about marketing. Go reach out to people that are phenomenal at marketing. Make LinkedIn posts, LinkedIn articles, podcasts, everything and anything in between. Because what happens is you are the constant, the host, the interviewer. Yes, make your show 80-20, 80% about them, 20% you should be asking questions, just like what you're doing. There's some people out there that they want to talk 80% of the time because it's their show. It's like, why do you even have a guest? So let them talk 80% of the time. But the cool thing is you can pick anything now. And now what you brought up a couple of times with cold outreach. I loved what I saw in your LinkedIn post. I'm doing this interview series about marketing. Love to have you on the show in the post. Love to interview. Here's the hook again, even if it's just 20 minutes, because if you say interview, they might default to an hour and they're like, oh, I'm too busy. 20 minutes, I can get it. You can record me. Even if it doesn't go public, get on Zoom, record it so you can write about it later on a LinkedIn article or a LinkedIn post. But that's one of my favorite things to share is interviewing can brand you and you get to pick the brand. You get to pick the guest. And like I said, you're the constant. You will become the marketing guy, the marketing girl, the sales guy, the sales girl, the entrepreneur guy, the entrepreneur girl, because you're the one that's talking about it. It's your series. So, and coming up with content can be tough. You have an endless stream of content if you interview people. You don't have to come up with it. Give them credit like I'll do on LinkedIn. This is their genius. Here's what I learned from interviewing Sarah. And then share their genius. They're going to remember you, and that's going to build your brand.
In a world full of change, be the constant. I think I just came up with it, but I think it sounds pretty good. To me, what I found as well, and as we're sort of pivoting towards podcasting, what I found is, well, mainly two things. The first thing is it is an incredible mutually beneficial assets. All right, you get access to an audience, I get access to content, and like you said, insights, indirect mentoring, as I like to call it, and that basically gives you access to people that you cannot even dream of. I can tell you this from obviously having a podcast myself. I've been absolutely amazed at one, how easy it is to, once I have a great conversation with somebody, aka Mark G. Carter, to say, by the way, we do have a podcast. Let's get to know each other through it. That's one. But the second thing is the people, the level in which you can reach basically people with a podcast is second to none. I've always been amazed. And obviously you interviewed some of the most successful people on planet Earth. So I'm sure you'll vouch for me on this. It is extraordinary how nothing is easy, but how simple it is to use it as a piece of leverage and get to basically those rooms in which you want to be in a way in which, one, there's very low resistance because you're showcasing somebody else's genius. Everybody likes that, right? Dale Carnegie, everybody's favorite word is their own name. So that's one. The second thing is doing so, like you said, with content. And that's where I really want you to tell me, because I know that you have an extensive strategy on the back end, and because repurposing of content now has been truly an art. The fact that you can have an interview for 1 hour, you basically split that into short clips, or again, utilize a methodology in which enables you to perhaps paint a mosaic with the exact same piece of content. Where do you see basically that evolving, and what do you think is your current strategy to make sure that you do the most out of a hard asset like a podcast?
Well, one thing is you got to have a good foundation. You got to have good content. And I know there's some people out there, and if it works, God bless. If you're getting 6 figures in sponsorship for a podcast, great. I know a lot of people that'll just go into a networking event and say, they'll put a link in the chat with like 50 people and say, I need guests for my podcast. It's like, there's no quality control there. None. I am picky. And it's not that I'm a top-rated podcast. I'll qualify that. But I am picky as heck about my guests. And what happens is I get better guests because the ones that do the research, they go back to my previous episodes. And if I just have a bunch of random friends having random conversations, those higher up experts that are in demand aren't going to be impressed. If someone's on my podcast, there's a darn good reason for them to be in the podcast. So I would say create that foundation. Be picky about it. Don't take just anybody to be a podcast guest. I'd rather skip a week if I'm stuck, just throw a warm body into a room and get a podcast put out for the sake of getting it put out. But that's one thing I would say, even from the start. And it's amazing, even when you get started, what you said is so true. I was, again, transparent. Episode 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20. People knew where it was. And anyone that knows when you're starting a podcast, you don't have that many listeners. I've only had 2 people turn me down. One, when I was doing a podcast about advice, and he was just too busy. The second one was there was a death in the family. Besides that, people say yes. It's what you said is dead on. It's unparalleled access, but be picky. Get quality guests that can whatever you want. If it's amazing advice like my podcast, great. If you're more of the story podcast, how I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and 10 leadership lessons from the climb, be that and own it. Are you the story guy? Are you the how-to girl? Whatever it might be, but keep a good foundation of guests. Ask for a certain level of guests. It's a certain level of success, a certain level of experience, financially, time-wise. They've been in business 10 years, whatever it might be. But do that, because then your assets are that much more valuable. Your sound clips are that much more valuable, because you're like with me, generally people on my podcast, they've been in business 5 to 10 years. There's always outliers. I'd love to find them. But build a good foundation of good guests, good content. And then when the people who are in demand research you, they're going to say yes to being a guest.
I think there's so much wisdom into that. It's sort of taking a short-term elite, like you said, even basically skipping a week if it's not to throw a one body out there. I like this analogy. I think in business, we're confronted with so many of these choices, so many of these. Do I take the short-term gains, but I know basically deep down that this is a long-term loss? Tell me more about, for you, when you're assessing risk for these type of, perhaps, again, I suppose, dilemmas. how do you have a formula? Do you have something? I know that you're a very intuitive guy, but do you have something that's sort of a string of conscience, if you will, to be able to say, well, look, with all the respect, it might be a great person. It might be somebody that I respect, and we may do at some point other work together. But this is simply not the right fit. How do you identify that? How do you communicate it? Most importantly, to not burn bridges. We don't never want to burn bridges if possible. And tell me more about just sort of all of that. These sorts of combinations of short-term gain, except instead of long-term appraisal.
It's definitely the energy exchange that we spoke about. It's
Okay.
you vibe or you don't. And even when we have a good vibe, I look at mine as a how-to podcast. And one of the things I'll do if someone is that I climb Mount Kilimanjaro, that's great, but I want to know how to start a business, how to create a marketing plan, how to find your next mentor, how to create a great PR campaign, whatever it might be. And I just very nicely will tell people, hey, this isn't me. I've built a network of the story podcasts that I mentioned. I love to be able to say it's not me, and I'll tell them what I just told you. Just I'm up front. It is what it is. It's not me, but I do have this awesome friend. He loves stories. I'd love to introduce you to him. So that's one way I do it. The other thing, if it's an energy exchange, if someone's even remotely intuitive, they know. You both, if it's one of those things where it is not a fit, for the most part, and this is where it's going to come down to whether it's concrete or you consider it woo-woo and out there, if the energy is not there, they pick it up too. There's a certain point where you both, I've had where it could have gotten really awkward, but both of us, without even getting into the mud, just both went, it was nice talking to you, bye-bye. They know just like you know. And the ones that are respectful, they pick it up. Even if they don't say it, like I said, it's just, okay, it was great meeting you. We're 20 minutes into a 30-minute call. We got nothing to talk about. We both know it. The energy is there. You're just like, okay, I appreciate your time today. Thanks for the time. If I can think of someone, a show you can be on, I'll let you know, and you move on. But it does come down to energy.
Right. Yeah, I pick up this quote from you, which something along the lines of you're referring to basically comparing podcasts with jazz, right? In jazz brief, jazz breathe, jazz surprise. It was very interesting. I don't know if it was an article or post, but I thought it was quite clever. You said something I think is in my opinion the most important thing for any aspiring entrepreneurs. When you don't have a boss, when you have your own schedule and you need to build it, guard your time, guard your reputation and your time with your life. And this sounds a bit dramatic because maybe it is actually, but this consumption of time is something that is so huge. And in my experience, perhaps it is much better to say somebody truthfully, hey, there's nothing here. Not gonna waste your time or mine, but I wish you nothing but greatness. Than to sort of, and I used to be this way, sort of be the guy that try to find something and jump basically within oops to say, oh, by the way, maybe this, maybe that. Don't be that guy. First of all, you or that girl, perhaps. There's a desperation to it, which I think makes you a little bit unattractive. But most importantly, I believe you set yourself up for failure, because even if for whatever reason, let's say the other person say yes, well, that's not really what you want. You sort of came up on the spot to not make it awkward, but then you sort of have a double negative because you're with somebody that cannot help you, cannot help them, and you have the time you need to spend to do so to get out of this kerfuffle.
Mm-hmm.
So guard your time with your life, I think is a very important lesson. Do you have, when you're thinking about time management, you seem to be a guy that is quite busy, right? You have multiple businesses, you have a family as well, obviously, and so on. Tell me more about, I suppose, do you have any time management tips? Or I suppose, how can you, again, coming back in sort of this sense of short-term games compared to long-term appraisal, how can you, from a time perspective, ensure that you're sort of hitting some of your objective from a short term, but most importantly, always planning ahead to be proactive instead of reactive all the time?
The best thing I can say is, one, when you're getting started, you're probably going to run into what you just said. You're going to run into, this person. So we talk about mentoring and advice. Oh, this person, she's a multimillionaire. She has the same type of company. I got to talk to her. And it's just not a fit. If you keep pushing and pushing and pushing and nothing's happening, take the hint, move on. I'd love to say it's that easy that you'll listen or watch this and poof, you're fixed. But when you get started, you're going to run into a lot of that. Once you get somewhat established, know who you want to talk to. And the biggest thing I can tell you, is before you put someone on your calendar, know why you're talking to them. And I'll put it out and I get it. And I've heard this. You never know who knows who. And I get it. But it's that thing where people say, here's my calendar link to get on my calendar. And they'll put it into a room of 50 people. To me, that says you have way too much time on your hands. If you're just going to let anyone in this room get on your calendar, especially if you're talking like a 30-minute block, that's crazy. I'm really big on, sometimes it is, hey, we both work with consultants. That's all I know. But there's a why. You work with consultants. I work with consultants. Maybe we should have a call and figure this out. That's one thing on my calendar link. There is a mandatory question. Why are we having this meeting? That's the best advice I can give. So if it's on your calendar, know why it's on your calendar, including the 60-minute block of time that no one can schedule. The why is a walk. I'm going to be in front of the computer all day. My why for that 60 minutes is I'm going to get outside. I'm going to recharge. I'm going to re-energize it. Then I'm going to come back to the computer. That can be a why, to recharge and re-energize yourself. But with other people, know why you're meeting with them. If you don't have a strong why, don't meet.
Absolutely incredible. No, I vouch for all of that. I think that and trust me, people. It seemed like a lot, but you'll do it. You'll get better at it. Everything comes to its own flow. I want to finish this, Mark, with the future of thought leadership content. I've seen that basically very recently. You've been talking a lot about AI and sort of the content saturation that is rising. And we talked a little bit about it, right? 1.2 million active podcasts. I don't know how many basically active LinkedIn profiles, but we're talking tens of millions for sure. I really want you to, and you always talked about, again, coming back to the basics, authenticity, human connections. A robot will never be able to do so. They might think so, and they might be very good at imitating such thing, but the novelty of human beings is much more within their soul and much more within their intuitions than, again, without their true knowledge. And I think we're going to see that over the next few years with the rise of AI. But if we are both in agreement that those are the key differentiator, what trends do you think will define the next generation of thought leaders, and how can they take advantage of it right now?
As far as AI goes?
As far as what is it, basically, as far as keeping your key differentiator alive through authenticity and basically human connections without losing them perhaps to AI and technology that can build contents. But again, how good is that, first and foremost? And most importantly, I suppose, do you think that trend will stick with us? This trend of, again, I suppose, quantity over quantity sometimes that we see over the web. And what do you think basically either the next trends or the continuous trends will impact the thought leadership space as a whole?
I think you should be true to your voice, have a voice. As far as AI goes, I use it for nudges or to just, get new thoughts or new ideas. I use it as a nudge, and then I'll write something myself. And I think as far as AI as a whole goes, I think the future is, it's not necessarily it is necessarily, AI is going to replace some jobs without a doubt. What I think is going to happen, this is corporate, this is entrepreneurship, branding, famous people, entrepreneurs, everything in between. I think that AI is going to replace some people. It's the people who know how to use AI and mix it with their own personality, their own brand. They're the ones that are going to dominate. It's not that they're never using it. They know how to use it to emphasize and accelerate their speed as far as their business goes, and use it for ideas, use it for brainstorming. They're going to know how to use AI as part of their role in their business or their corporate job. The people who completely depend on AI to do all the writing and press releases, I don't think that's going to fly. Most of the time, if you use it too much, people can spot an AI written article these days. It's getting very obvious. But writing something, my next book is monetizing your next big idea with passion and purpose. I've gone into ChatGPT, define passion, but it's just to get my brain going. Like, oh, that's cool. And I did at one point, I did cut and paste. But then when I was rereading the chapter of the book, I'm like, I could tell, if I can, it was so obvious. It was like my voice, AI. My voice. And I went, oh no, I'm taking that out. And I use it to get ideas to spark my own creativity, my own writing, my own marketing. But as far as final pieces, even my blog, even my podcast, one of the things I'm doing every other week this month, I write my own show notes. And I get it. You can take a video, pop it into AI, boom, you get something written for you. two things. One, when I'm an interviewer, I'm in interview mode. When I'm in show notes and writing, I'm in student mode. So I'm getting, it's my time, but financially, it's like a free MBA or PhD learning from these amazing people on my podcast, but it's also my voice. I don't want to lose my voice and have people go, it's just AI. So I think it's going to be the people that can use AI to accentuate their services, their marketing, their branding. Those people are going to end up ruling. The people that rely totally on AI, I think they're going to get replaced by AI because the boss is going to realize they don't care. It's like, all she's doing is putting in prompts. I can put in prompts. You're fired. I'll just take AI and put in the same prompts that you were, as opposed to knowing how to use it. I think that's going to be a big differentiator, is the people that know how to use it to emphasize their brand and their voice.
Be you, everybody else is taken.
Yes.
Mr. Mark J. Carter, it was such an absolute pleasure to share this incredible moment with you. It's very interesting because you have a generosity towards your time, your intellect, your insight that I think is incredibly authentic and passionate. I can see it through the screen. I've never met you in person, but I'm sure one day I will, and I will fall in love with it once more. But I really appreciate you being so, again, insightful and I suppose so vulnerable towards what works, what doesn't, and giving an incredible blueprint to all the people that just watch this. So I so appreciate it, and I would love if you can share some last words of wisdom with our audience, please.
I would definitely go back to curiosity. If it's not innate, practice it and start learning from people. Again, with LinkedIn, podcasting, anything you want to do, start with, if you want to learn about marketing. When I wanted to learn about podcasting, and I took it down because it was a hobby, it was taking up my time, but for a while, I still own it, but I ran podcastingadvice.com. Why? I wanted to start a podcast. I was interviewing people, including people who make a good living from podcasts. Why reinvent the wheel? So my advice would be, anything you want to do, let's keep it with entrepreneurship, with your business. Pick something: marketing, sales, mentoring, branding, networking, whatever it might be. Do an interview series. That's the best advice I can give you. Even if it's every Friday, I'm going to do it. I'm taking this to the lowest freaking common denominator. Take all excuses out. I'm going to do the Friday thoughts on marketing, a LinkedIn post. Reach out to people, get referrals from friends, and say, hey, I'm doing a series about marketing, and I'd love to feature you on it. Ideally do a podcast, but at least LinkedIn, whatever you might do, start that. Be curious. Let other people talk about themselves. Everyone's favorite topic is themselves. Use that to your advantage. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't take 5 years to make 5 years worth of mistakes when you can learn what to do instead, and you can learn what not to do through the interviews. That is definitely what I want to leave you with. Start an interview, pick something, an idea gap, where you are, where you want to be. Build the bridge. Like I said, with your friends and your network, advice, support, and connections, but build that bridge, the knowledge, the experiential advice with an interview series. It will blow your mind, the people that will say yes, and it'll blow your mind how fast you'll grow.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.